Hi.
So, I'm frustrated. We just recorded
this episode.
We thought we were recording this episode. Got 50 minutes into it and I realized I never hit record.
Hello and welcome to This Resilient Lineage, where we reflect on the past, anticipate the future, and discover what God is up to today. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Milo.
And today we're going to be talking about summer. Dude, our moods are so funny. They're so
like, what's funny? It's funny because I'm frustrated because we just spent almost nearly an hour. It was a great podcast. We even we're like, man, that was really good. And then I looked down and I never hit record. I don't know why.
This one's going to be the one. This is the one that the Lord wants us to send out.
Okay. We're going to trust
He's going to unlock something in our brains.
I'm going to believe that.
Okay.
And then we'll figure out what that is afterwards. Okay. Yeah. So this is a
summer episode.
Yeah. So this is a podcast we've been talking about doing for a while. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that
we were just talking about it.
Well, we just literally recorded this podcast. So trying to figure out how to be spontaneous, as we go through the same notes again. But so years ago, back when I was church planting in Indiana, we provided a little workbook to families, which was called Summer on Purpose. And as I was going through, I don't know why, but I was going through a bunch of files earlier this year. And I tripped onto this document, and I think it was around the time you and I were just starting to talk about doing the podcast. And I thought, I'm going to remember that. And we have a folder where we store ideas. And we'd even talked about it a little bit when we were scheduling things out
a while ago,
a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to get back into this. And as I was looking, I was like, this is so. We're going to kind of start off with some assumptions. One assumption I have with all of this is that people want to live a life of intentionality. I think a biblical principle that we find pretty consistently throughout Scripture is that we are to steward the resources that God entrusts to us. So we're supposed to steward our finances well. We're supposed to steward our gifts and talents well. We're supposed to steward our time well. We should be stewarding our relationships, honoring those that the Lord brings into our lives and serving them and letting them serve us when we need it. So there's all of there's a massive stewardship principle consistently within Scripture. And one of the things that is consistently laid out is to whom much is given, much will be required. And if you are faithful with a little, you'll be faithful with some more. But if you're not faithful, if you're not stewarding those resources well, you'll find those things starting to evaporate. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how there's different times of year offer distinct opportunities.
Yeah.
So your mom's a massive fan of Christmas, yes. And that kind of whole vibe, and she loves to bake and decorate and create an atmosphere in our home and things like that. Well, that's that works in November, December, right? It's very specific to that time. And what I want us to consider today, again, as we go through our notes with one another, is this idea that we can live summer on purpose, that there's maybe some distinct opportunities that exist in summer that we should be thinking about. Now, having said all of that, we're going to go through quite a few questions to ask, reflective questions for people to ask themselves. Don't feel the need to take notes on any of all of this stuff because we've already done it for you. If you in Spotify or Apple Podcast, if you pull up the podcast details, you'll notice that there's a link to the show. And if you click that link, it'll take you to our website where this podcast is hosted. And you'll see a place for you to be able to download show notes. If you download these notes, all of these questions are listed there. And we do that with all of our episodes because we want to be able to pass on the things we're learning. We're already typing all of this stuff anyway.
So it's
easy for us just to make it available to everybody in a little bit more organized and clear manner. So don't feel the need to I had somebody message me one time. They're like, hey, the podcast was great. Had to stop and start taking notes. I'm like, bro, here's the link to all the notes.
Yeah.
We're happy that we were able to do that. So the question we're asking is how are we going to spend, right? How are we going to spend these distinct months that we have in front of us? And we're using as our sort of paradigm, we're using the Connect, Equip, Worship, Serve, which we talked about all the way back in episodes 5 and 6. This idea of that the early church did these 4 things. They connected, equipped, worship, served. That, so in Acts chapter 2, it says that they gathered in one another home and broke bread with one another. This idea of building relationships, being in community with one another. It says they listened to the apostles' teaching. So they're equipping themselves with the truth and the word of God. It says they were in prayer with one another. Some would even say that maybe even the breaking bread was taking communion with each other. So there's a worship element with that. And then the serve piece is they held all things in common for those that were in need. So this idea of serving. And so it's that kind of, I want to throw that lens across to thinking about our summer. How could you step into your summer thinking through each of those domains in very intentional ways? What does it look like for me to journey with others, to journey together as I build these relationships? What does it look like for me to journey with effectiveness, equipping? What does it look like for me to worship or journey with focus? And then what does it look like to journey with influence as I seek to serve others? So what we have is a list of questions to go through for these things. And we'll just dive in. You want to walk through the Connect journey together, please?
Got you. So since summer is full of activities and great things that are developing and deepening relationships in our lives, under the categories below, we've created a list of questions that we just want you guys to ponder and think about, and how are you going to apply this to your own life? So question number 1, how can you connect over meals with your friends and family? And then what kind of meals would you like to have with one another in this summer? And then what nights work best to intentionally connect with one another? What is one family or a friend activity that you can plan in June, July, and August? And then what could it look like to date your spouse this summer? And then what could it look like to have a date with your daughter or son? Great questions. To kind of just like walk through those, there's specific meals that you can eat during the summer versus not in the summer, like in spring or fall.
Because I have a grill. I love using the grill. But one of the things I like about doing the grill is I can sit outside and just as the steak's grilling or, whatever we got on there. I like doing ribs. As it's just on there, it's just chilling in the backyard.
You can smell it.
Listening to music or reading a book or watching YouTube how-to videos, or whatever it is. Like just that kind of chill vibe and energy, having friends over and just sitting in the back porch chatting, like those that's a summer thing. Well, and again, some of this depends on where you live. Some people may live in a place where, have you ever been to Yuma, Arizona? Oh my gosh. That's probably not, unless you got a covered patio, it might not be a summer thing because it's 120 degrees outside or something like that. But generally speaking, what we're talking about is what are those things that are distinct to those summer months, that you could do. There's some foods. We like to eat artichokes.
Oh, it's heavenly.
Yeah.
So good.
But that's a seasonal item. There's some of those things, or there's things that you kind of attribute to the season.
Yeah, I love dogs, hot dogs, and hamburgers.
Yeah.
Have people over, have a good watermelon slice in your hand.
Yeah.
A cool beverage in the other.
With the smell of freshly
cut grass.
Grass in the air.
And then maybe a campfire so you can smell the fire. The smell of the fire. When you get the smell of the fire on you.
Do you like
and
that?
then you go home and it's I don't want to shower. But then then my room smells burnt. But it's a great smell. It's that summer.
Yeah.
This is the zone.
And I think, there's times in my life where, it's fantastic when those things happen spontaneously. That's fun, right? Because there's a sense of, there's a spirit of adventure with that and the unanticipated and the unexpected. which is great. But what I found, particularly as people gain more and more responsibilities, the less spontaneous often they can be, just because they have other demands on their day. You know, they have family obligations, they've got work obligations, they may be volunteering somewhere and they got to be at a certain place at a certain time. So a lot of these things, which can all be good things, can kind of crowd out the calendar. And as a result, you know, when was the last time you just sat around a campfire or a fire with a bunch of friends as the sun went down and just were laughing and chilling and enjoying the evening? And I would say is that, you know, for some folks, it's like, man, that sounds amazing. And I remember I remember moments like that. I don't know how to create moments like that. I don't know how to set those up. And so the idea is like asking a set of questions, not to cultivate unrealistic expectations, but kind of go like, okay, I've got 3 months in front of me here. How could I step into these months with some intentionality and do
some course of action?
Yeah. And do it in a way that, I can coordinate some things with some friends and be like, hey, you available, you know, Saturday night? And they're like, well, not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. And oh, that works for these folks too. And hey, let's shoot for that Saturday night. You know,
and I'd say like schedule it out daily. Like, what is today going to look like? Make it like a daily thing, not a checklist. Like, you know, New Year's resolutions. Here's all the things I want to have done. Bullet points, just like check them off when I have time. It's like schedule your day.
Yeah,
in your week.
Yeah, learn. I mean, man, if there's a way, if learning to manage your time is huge. You know, there's all this stuff out there, and I'm not going to. This is not the podcast to talk about time management. However, having said that, in a lot of ways, what we're talking about is how do you manage a limited resource, time, with desires. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to deepen my friendships with these people. Yeah. I want to deepen my relationships with these family members. I want to connect with these folks that, you know, with my neighbors that maybe I don't know super well. And summer's a great time, right? Because it can be kind of non-evasive. It's different having somebody in your backyard than it is having somebody in your living room. And I'm not saying you don't have them in your living room, but it's a different thing. Do you know what I mean? So like, how do you structure your time in a way to intentionally connect with others? And it doesn't have to be an all-day event or, you know, a whole weekend thing. It could be, hey, here's this friend. This friend keeps coming to mind. When could we go grab coffee with one another? Mm-hmm. Or when could we go, you know, meet up for breakfast? Or, you know, go out to a restaurant late one night and catch up? Like, what are the things that how could you use those little 2 or 3 hours in your day, as well as those 2 to 3 day weekends that you might have? Mm-hmm. Like, what does it look like to leverage all of that stuff?
And then, like, what are you going to do with your spouse this summer? Like, how are you going to schedule dates? Yeah. Or even, like, schedule times with your kids.
Yeah. I know your mom's going to listen to this podcast and go, I heard you say that. What are we going to do?
Let's go on another adventure.
Yeah. And again, like so for us this summer, I won't tell you what we were planning, but your mom and I
will be asking after we stop airing. You can't just drop that.
Sure I can.
Well, then I'll probably get disappointed.
Oh, you totally will be disappointed with what we were thinking. Yeah, we were like drumming up we had 2 different like pretty cool things lined up. But then as we looked at the calendar and I almost pulled the trigger on one of them. Well, actually I almost pulled the trigger on both of them. But then as we looked at some of our financial priorities and where we needed to sort of align up some other things, we backed off. And it's actually a good thing we did, because then the calendar got crowded out by some other stuff that was actually more enriching opportunities for us as a family. So my point is what we're doing is we're going to block out like some staycation time. You're trying to guess what it is now, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, don't even go there. So but my point is, and this is one of the things we're going to do is, you know, years ago, I took a class called a pastoral ministry taught by Tom Lorimer, that you know. And I remember distinctly there was a class where he said, you know, there's people who vacation where you live. And a lot of times people will go, well, in order for me to get a vacation, I have to go away. And sometimes I understand where that's coming from. Like, it's hard for me to vacation and stay at home because I just see 1,000 things I need to work on. And there's value in being in a different place where it's not my responsibility to fix these things or take care of that stuff. So I can appreciate that. Having said that, though, there are things in your immediate area that you could do as day trips or weekend trips that are, you don't require a tremendous amount of financial or time resources to take advantage of that you can do. So like this summer, we're going to take some time and explore things here in Virginia. This is my first summer in Virginia because most of the summer last year I was gone.
Yeah.
I was deployed, and so it was just, it didn't, and we had some other priorities that we had to take advantage of. So my point is this, is like wherever you're living, there's people that vacation there. Have you thoroughly explored those areas? And some of it might be like, yeah, I've done everything. It's like, well, things change, over time, there's always things that get rehabbed or get refinished, and, maybe it's worth another visit. So think of those areas. Don't always think that it has to be this big vacation. Cause I think sometimes people go, oh, this summer we're working towards this thing, which is great. Like we've got this amazing trip down to the wherever, right? That we're to the Caribbean or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, awesome.
What are you going to do now?
But you're kind of grinding out till you get there. And then afterwards it's like, oh, we got to keep grinding now to pay for what we just did or to make up for the lost time. And it's like, there might be some other paths. There might be some other course of actions that you could take as a way to think about connecting with those around you. All right. Second one, equip. So this is to journey with effectiveness. You want to read through that?
Yeah. So we should always strive to be more like Christ. Equipping is a way of providing ourselves with things that will grow us closer to God and be more into his likeness. So equip is like the journey of effectiveness. And so like, how do you want to grow or better yourself? Then what do you want to learn this summer? What hobbies are available to you during the summer months? And then what will you do to relax or rest? And then what topics will you be learning about this summer?
Have you thought about that stuff?
Mm-hmm. I have. I mean, there's opportunities that are at hand that now that I'm a senior, stepping out of high school and then going back to being a freshman, but like an elite freshman in a university.
An elite?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Because like, I mean, like when you're a freshman, it's like high school freshman, but like I'm like the freshman.
You're like, I'm a college freshman.
I'm a college freshman. It sounded so dumb when I said it. And I just like kept going with it, like hoping like I could just avoid it.
No.
Stop.
I'm not a college freshman. I'm an elite college freshman.
Okay.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So now that like I'm finishing up my year, I help lead a co-lead a high school girls Bible study that we ended like 2 weeks ago, and we're gonna have like a big celebration for summer, but like that chapter is ending, and I'm stepping into a new chapter with our young adult group at church. So that's like something I'm exploring and actively going to be participating in.
And we started doing something here at our house.
We started doing something here at our house. I thought we should start a family small group. It kind of started with our sermons around church.
So we're fortunate to go to a church that, provides good teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And one of the things I've always been frustrated with is that oftentimes there will be a lot of work that goes into the Sunday morning service and the preaching, because I know what it takes to prep a sermon, and I know what it takes to prep a good sermon. And then, you preach it and you're done, and afterwards people are like, that was really good. And as a preacher, you always kind of know, how much of this is anybody ever going to live with? How much of this are they actually going to figure out how to apply to their lives? And that's like one of the discouraging things is that there's more mileage you can get out of a sermon than just, I went and I heard it. Maybe I took some notes and highlighted something in my Bible. And, that's if I'm being super diligent, right? And And it's like, well, what if we could do a little bit more? And so we just mapped out this idea of like, well, what if we got together? It ended up being young adults in our living room on Sunday night and talked about how to apply the sermon. So I messaged the pastor and I said, hey, is there any way I can get a hold of the sermon notes? And then I created some application questions and we just spent the night talking about it.
And it was great. Like, it promoted great discussion. And it's a variety of ages. I mean, like, you're so old. I'm kidding.
Well, we're the old people
You're
in the
the
room.
old people in the room.
Yeah.
The sage.
Is that, yeah, okay.
And then there's like, college sophomores, juniors, and then there's me, a senior, going to be an elite freshman.
Oh, a couple seniors in there.
A couple seniors, and then there's still some like in high school that are like sophomores in high school. So
and we did
it has some bandwidth.
Yeah, and we very much were like, hey, let's do it once and see what happens. And if everybody's like, this is stupid, great. We tried it and we're good to go. And then, but we did it, and everybody that's told us, I don't know if everybody's told you, but the feedback has been like, hey, that was a really great experience. In fact, I had on Wednesday night, we were at church, and I had a couple of the fathers come to me.
Really?
And they're like, hey, my son really enjoyed Sunday night. Like he came back and he was like, that was really good. So thanks for doing that. And I was like, well, it's in some ways it's easy for us. We know how to have people in our home. We know how to lead discussions in these areas. So this is not, it's probably the most difficult thing is just making sure that, the magazines are put away on the coffee table. It's like the house is always generally picked up. And so it's not a hard thing for us to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun. That's a fun thing for us to do as a family.
So it's a family effort.
In fact, we talked about starting a book as a family. The Cure.
We're not writing a book. We are going to read it. We're going to read a book
together as a family. Yeah.
Just
starting I can see how people are like, oh, the Curtises are writing a book. No, that's not what we're saying.
We're going to read a book.
We're going to read a book. It's a big one. It's 25 pages. But there's lots of pictures.
This just escalated so quick. We're going to start a book called The Cure. We're going to read a book called The Cure. Just like the four of us.
Yeah, which is a great book.
Yeah.
I've read that book several times. And so
I'm like agreeing with you. Yeah, it is a great book. I haven't read it.
It's amazing. I've heard.
10 out of 10 recommend.
According to Amazon reviews. But the idea is like, what do you want to get better? And then so this stupid little thing. And I know your mom keeps looking over my shoulder like, what are you thinking? Because guess what I've been looking into? I want to learn more about 3D printers.
You mentioned that.
I'm kind of curious about these things. Like printing my own.
Where would you put it?
I don't know. That's a secondary. Well, I know where I'll put it. I have got a garage. I know where I'll put things. Unlike you have a tendency to buy stuff and go like, I'll figure out where to put it later. And then it ends up in my garage.
Is it still in the garage?
It's still in the garage.
Okay, yeah.
So that needs to get solved.
I know.
But anyway, my point is this. What are those things that you could think about going like, man, I'd like to try that. I'd like to experiment with that. And, I'm thinking about a 3D printer. And I know what model I think I'm looking at getting. And I've been playing this. You know how I am, right? I think about these things for a long time. And then I'm going to be checking out Facebook Marketplace. And if I see a good deal, I'll get it. I'm going to wait for a deal because that's how I roll, right? My point is constantly thinking about learning. And I think oftentimes what happens with people, particularly like you're a student,
school, yeah.
You're used to an environment where you're constantly being told, read this, write this paper, take this test, work on this project.
Fed information.
Yeah, you're fed information all the time with deadlines to get a certain amount of work done and things like that. And when you get to the summer months, you want to take a break from that, which I completely understand. At the same time, where is that internal framework to kind of go,
okay, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do to be a learner, not just to pass a class or to get a degree, but what am I going to do to learn something?
To be a diligent person.
Yeah. And what does the Lord want me to do? Like, how is the Lord leading me?
How is he going to work?
How does he want to grow me? How does he want to stretch me? What new skills is he asking me to develop? What new thoughts is he asking me to consider and entertain? So, yeah, the idea of to journey with effectiveness, right? Because I think everybody wants to live an effective life.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, I think some of it depends on how you define effectiveness, right? And is it about on the terms that Christ lays out for us, like to take up your cross daily and follow him, to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read us our next one?
Yeah, the next one is worship. So we have connect, equip, and now we have worship. And it says our journey to focus. And worship is the time that we set aside to focus on God. Whether in our homes or together as a body, each of us need time to focus on the matters God brings to our attention. So how can you grow closer to God this summer? What do you want to start, or what do you want to be reading this summer? And then what is your prayer time going to look like? What Bible study would you like to dive into? What book of the Bible would you like to know better by the end of the summer? How could you use your prayer journal this summer? And then what could family devotions look like?
And these are none of these questions are intended to be exhaustive, right? But the idea is to kind of get you thinking in a particular direction. Because the idea is, what will your life be better at focusing on God come September 1 than it was on June 1? Yeah, I mean, that's a good way. That's a great way to frame it. You know what I mean? Like
set a goal.
Yeah. How much am I more in his word now than I was before? How much is my prayer life fresher? Am I exploring different ways to pray? Like I put the prayer journal thing in here because I think there's value in it. You have to do it forever, but like, could you do it this summer? Journaling is new for me. It's something I've tried over and over and over again. And it's really only been in the last year and a half I've been journaling my prayer time. And it's changing like how I pray, how I read the word, how I kind of even track how God is answering prayer and things.
Yeah.
But the idea being, what does it look like to kind of recalibrate that focus on God like I should?
Yeah, I will say when we have 21 days prayer, that's when I write down all my prayers. Because, I feel like we talk about this all the time on the podcast, but our church has 21 days prayer 2 times a year, one in
January, February, yeah.
And then one in August. And so it's this time dedicated every morning that you come to the church. You're going to see other people, friends, community, of those coming together at 6 a.m. And then just praying to God. There's a mini sermon and worship or there's a message and worship, and you have the majority of the time to just pray, come to God. And what are you going to do now? And that's when I started journaling. And then that's when I started giving specific things. Okay, I didn't mention this when we rehearsed this the first time. But one of the things that the Lord has put on my heart lately is it's really easy to say Lord, here's my life, because you're not really thinking about what your life entails. And when you start breaking it down, okay, my life means work at Chick-fil-A Portsmouth Boulevard. It means Western Branch High School. It means Regent University in the fall. It means Tidewater Community College classes during the summer. It means families coming in for graduation. It means Bible study on Sunday nights. It means liberty. It's this huge umbrella for all these individual things that when it's Lord, here's my life, it's you don't know what you're giving him. And so when you sit down and intentionally plan out your day-to-day life or plan out your summer, what are you intentional with? Okay, Lord, here's my work. Here's where I work. Here's what I'm due. Okay, I'm giving this to you because I know you can work way more through this than I could ever do it on my own. So here it is. I'm being intentional with this. Here's that. That's giving your whole life. Once you give all those things up, you know what you've given him. And then you know what he will bless. And you know what he will be there will be an abundance of.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about this summer? Is that like journaling your prayers? Are you going to see him answer those prayers more than you thought they were ever going to do it?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to forget. And if you're not being intentional with it, your attention's not there and you're just going to like overlook it.
Yeah. And, there may be some people listening to this podcast too that are like, okay, this is all good. Like, I don't even go to church. Mm-hmm. And it's like, great. Find a church.
We have an episode for that.
Listen to the last 2 episodes, where we talk about reasons why people don't go to church and steps you can take to go to church. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a public portion of worship to this point, and then there's a private portion. But the idea being like, how are you going to prioritize worship over the course of the summer? Because I know there's worship attendance in churches dip during the summer months. And it's because people are vacationing and they're playing, sleeping in, and they were doing something. They were at the rodeo all day on Saturday, and they're just too tired to go to church on Sunday. And it's like, okay, like that's a choice. You made a choice to prioritize the rodeo over worship, which that's between you and the Lord. Like, this is not me trying to shame or guilt or anything like that. Like, that's a priority. So what does it look like to set the priorities that the Lord has for you?
Yeah.
And I think that's, even like when we would be on vacation on Sundays, we would always try to take time, even as a family. Hey, we're going to watch this sermon or listen to this.
We're going to go to this new church.
Or we're going to visit a church that we hadn't been to before. And like, the point being, don't let worship slip over the course of the summer because you're so busy out and about doing a bunch of really cool, fun things that are available to you during the summer, but it becomes at the neglect of making sure your focus is stayed on God. That, there's that line. It's one of my favorite lines. Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of his goodness and grace. When I was in high school, how you get the yearbooks and everybody signs them and puts a little note. That was the note I put in everybody's yearbook when I graduated from high school.
Really?
Yeah. And this idea that when you're focused on God, when you worship him on a consistent and intentional basis, the things of this world grow strangely dim. Mm-hmm. They're just not that interesting. But being focused on him is like, okay, all of a sudden it's, I talked about doing a 3D printer. It's through the lens of, how could I have a 3D printer that could accomplish things for the kingdom? Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that question.
But you're going to figure it out anyway.
That could be an interesting thing to figure out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this podcasting equipment we all got. We wanted to get some good stuff to have a good quality because we like to do things with excellence. Why? Hopefully for kingdom purposes, right? So what does it look like? But you have to have you have to have those eyes focused on him.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. You want to read the last one?
Yeah. You want to serve. This is like the journey with influence. So intentionally demonstrating the love of Christ is a responsibility we all carry. So here's some questions. Like, how are you going to serve your neighbors? And then I would say, how can you serve your neighbors well? What could it look like to serve those in your family? What ministries could we support this summer? Independently, privately, and publicly. Like, what ministries can you cultivate between you and God? And then that's your own effort, but then with those in your community or a family effort. And then what could we do to volunteer in a way that helps those who are going through difficulties?
Yeah, and I think, because often, I think probably it's easy for folks maybe for the first 3 of these to kind of go like, I'm on board. But then when you start talking about serving, it's like, oh, well, we're busy. It's like, well, everybody's busy. Got it. Like, but we're supposed to be a light. And that light is supposed to dispel darkness, and that light is supposed to be for benefit of others, for the purposes of advancing the kingdom. And so, how are you thinking through that? And again, we're not asking these questions like, these are the questions you better be asking. It's not that kind of thing. Is I really do believe that living with intentionality and being kind of in a posture to ask these kind of questions opens your heart up for the Spirit to kind of go, okay, now I can lead you, because you're not walking through your day with a bunch of assumptions about how you're going to live your life or how you are going to make the most of your summer. It's like, no, I want to come up with a plan, come up with a strategy. I like to plan. I like to strategize.
Course of action.
Yeah, I like to have a course of action. I like to have a couple
it's
courses
not in
of
the
action.
calendar.
Well, I don't know if we're doing it, right?
We're busy.
Yeah. But I think there's a piece where you kind of lay out and go like, okay, how are we going to do this, live our lives in a way that's going to serve others? So like, what ministries could you support this summer? Is there a Habitat house that's going up? You could go frame some houses,
Yeah.
Is there a homeless shelter that you could go serve at? Is there, is there a ministry that works with, there's some of these ministries that will take donated goods and package them up and send them to overseas to families that don't have like clothes and, hygiene kits and things like that. Like there's all kinds of ministries out there that are always looking for families particular that will come and they'll do something to benefit the world around them. Like we talk about neighbors, don't be so focused on, somebody in Africa that you neglect the person that's right across the street.
It's true.
Are there some elderly folks on your block that your family could go support and love on and do something for? Is there some neighbors that that maybe they're going through a hard time and you could just go and bake them a plate of cookies and just say like, hey, I wanted to let you guys know we're thinking of you. Or I don't know. That's the point isn't to go, oh, wait, say that again. Is it how many cookies? And how big is the plate? It's like, that's not the point. The point is like, start asking questions, then ask the Spirit to guide you and lead you. And
then he will present the opportunities.
Yeah, he'll present the opportunities. But it's kind of one of those, like with all of these, years ago I heard somebody say, they were sort of mentoring, coaching me, and I had made some wrong turns. I had done some things that weren't like bad or immoral or something, but it was sort of like, probably shouldn't have done that. And the person, their comment to me was, yeah, but it's easier to steer a moving car than a parked one. So at least you're moving. And so it's easier to course correct because you're already moving. Some people are so focused on wanting to have everything clearly mapped out before they do anything that nothing ever happens. And so, to start thinking through some of these questions will get your brain, will get your heart moving in a direction, may generate some conversations in your household about like, where could we go? What could we do? And all of a sudden, next thing you know it, the Lord's bringing opportunities your way you didn't even know. You hadn't even thought about it. It wouldn't have been on your list if you spent 100 years thinking over it, right? Because you weren't dialed into that opportunity until you started asking questions that the Spirit was able to kind of go like, actually, I want to pull your focus over here.
Yeah, and I will say like the more you're in His Word and the more you're guided by the Spirit, the way you're going to view service will change.
How so?
I'm a high school student. I know what volunteer hours are.
Yeah.
And I know people that serve. I used to.
Well, hold on. You say that because like you have to get a certain amount to stay in your honor society, right? That it's a means to an end. Like
the purpose isn't to serve.
It's to maintain my status in something.
Yeah. And I feel like that's where, like a lot of people my age get lost. It's just kind of like, well, what am I going to get out of it? So when your priorities start changing and your eyes are just fixated on the Lord, you're going to gain so many experiences and like wisdom and just like have a great time while you're serving, because you're going to cultivate you're going to get new sets of tools to help you better your relationship with God. When you start serving for the Lord and like start actively pouring yourself into the things He wants you to pour into genuinely without thinking about like, I'm at 17 hours. I need 3 more. Now I have to sit here another 3 hours to just get this stupid signature. It's like that attitude isn't going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
And then that's all you're going to think of services. It's just what am I going to get out of it? So my encouragement is, connect with people that are going to direct you in the right path. That's just going to encourage you, hold you accountable, be a light, or find a sage, or find someone to mentor, or find your people, and then equip yourself, but maybe even equip those around you. Provide, like, iron sharpens iron, like help them out, but also do what you need to do. Worship, praise the Lord, position your heart, or fixate your whole body in a posture that's going to be open for this, and then like go out and do something.
So all these things play together, right? Yeah. They're intended to all complement one another. It's not like I do this over here and I do that over there, and
it's not private versus public. They all like weave together.
Yeah, they all weave in and out of one another. But I think thinking through each of those domains helps. The connect, equip, worship, serve helps kind of go, okay, how am I going to build those relationships? Well, we're doing this thing on Sunday nights now, or at least we're going to do it one more night. We'll do it. Well, that's going to be our thing. Are we doing it again? I don't know, right? We'll just do it one more night and see what happens. That kind of posture, like, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to equip ourselves when we do gather up with one another. And we've even talked about, could somebody bring guitar and lead us in music, or, how could that look different each time we gather up? Not for the purposes of being different, but for responding to what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a time we all gather up and go serve. Like, the point is like thinking through these things intentionally to live life on purpose, to do summer on purpose. Instead of just we're going to grind to that vacation to Disney, or we're going to grind to that camping trip we got lined up, or, well, we're not exactly sure what we're going to do. We're taking the kids to this VBS, and then we're going to go to that. My mom's over here. And it's just all kind of like done because that's what we did last summer. Yeah. Right? It's like, well, okay, good. I mean, I'm glad you did those things last summer, but what does God have for you this summer? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, like, as you're entering this season, and it's really easy to just want to look forward. I mean, like, I'm ready to be done with school. I'm just looking forward to like not going back into that school. But I will say, like, you have to have some kind of structure and step into that. And it's really easy to get lost in the sauce, and you don't really have a rhythm. And then when that happens, nothing changes when nothing changes. So you need change.
Good thought.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. We would love it if you would share this podcast.
Share.
Rate, review, follow. Our follow numbers go up every week. So we thank you for those of you that I think it's about 70% of folks that listen to the show follow or subscribe to the show.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's actually pretty solid.
We're at a C.
Let's
get to a B minus. Let's get to a B minus.
B minus. Let's work our way up there.
Another 10%. Let's do it.
So if you are following, subscribing, thank you. If you're not, help us get there. That'd be greatly appreciated.
Just hit a button.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can find me. I'm Milo Curtis on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X.com.
I'm Olivia Grace. I have 2 cute bows.
Yeah. If you want to find Olivia, it's not Olivia Curtis. It'll be Olivia Grace on Instagram. And then you're Olivia Curtis on Facebook. So you can find her that way. If you want to email us, you can email hello@thisresilientsoul.com. Like we said, these show notes are going to be on our website. So if you go to the podcast show link, you'll see a link there, and it'll take you straight to the episode where you can download the PDF. It has all these questions in it. Review that stuff, shoot it off to a friend, let others know about this podcast. We want to hear from you. We want to know how we can improve and expand the impact of this podcast, because we're doing this. We enjoy doing this, and we think it's of benefit to others. And so if it's of benefit to you, let others know how it is. That's the best recommendation we could ever get, is when somebody says, I told somebody about your podcast. So thank you all for listening, and we hope that you are going to be intentional by living your summer on purpose.